In 1962, when American automakers were still caught up in a race for bigger dimensions, chrome-plated grills and conservative lines, a strange, foreign object suddenly appeared. Its shape was sleek, like a spaceship. No front grille, and it looked as if it had just touched down from a distant future. This was the Studebaker Avanti. Born in the most difficult chapter of the company's history, the Avanti stood completely apart from the rest of the industry. It didn't follow any trend. It didn't chase any best-selling formula. It was a bold gamble, so different that the market of its time couldn't accept it. And yet, that's exactly why today the Avanti is regarded as one of the most forward-thinking designs of its era. This was a machine that carried the full, fearless spirit of the 1960s, not built to please the crowd, but to redefine the future. Are you ready to discover that story? By the early 1960s, Studebaker, a name that had once stood proudly among America's automotive pioneers, was in trouble. Sales had been sliding year after year. Production costs were eating away at profits. And their cars, well, they looked tired. While Ford, GM, and Chrysler rolled out fresh, modern designs, Studebaker's lineup seemed stuck in another decade. Inside the company, things weren't any better. The South Bend facilities were aging and inefficient. The organization was tangled in outdated practices, with departments working in silos rather than in sync. Employee morale was low, weighed down by rumors and uncertainty. Analysts openly speculated that Studebaker might not survive more than a few more years. Then, in 1961, a surprising figure stepped into the president's office, Sherwood Eggert. He wasn't a car guy in the traditional sense. He came from the heavy equipment and business strategy world, not the assembly lines of Detroit. But that outsider's perspective would prove to be his greatest advantage. Eggert wasn't interested in simply patching up the old ways. He knew that following the safe route, another practical sedan or yet another pickup, would only delay the inevitable. To save Studebaker, he believed the company needed something shocking, something bold enough to grab headlines, turn heads on the street, and make people believe again. Not a Me Too model, not a bargain bin special, but a car that could make the entire American market stop and look. It wouldn't be built to chase trends. It wouldn't be shaped to please the safe middle. It would be a statement. A declaration that Studebaker still had fire in its veins. And from that vision, the first sketches of what would become the Avanti began to take form. To bring his bold vision to life, Sherwood Eggert knew he needed more than just a talented stylist. He needed a design legend. Someone with the credibility to silence doubters and the imagination to break every rule. His choice? Raymond Loey. Loey wasn't just another car designer. He was the mind behind some of America's most iconic visuals. The sleek Streamliner passenger trains, the modernized Coca-Cola logo, and several of Studebaker's most memorable pre-war and post-war models. He understood how to blend art, engineering, and marketing into a single irresistible package. Eggert gave Loey a simple brief. Create a car unlike anything else on the road. No corporate committees, no endless rounds of approvals, just freedom to design. Loey accepted on one condition: he would work away from the distractions and politics of the factory. So he set up shop in Palm Springs, California, in a rented villa surrounded by desert air and mountain views. There, he assembled a small, hand-picked team. Tom Kellogg, a young and fearless talent, John Epstein, a skilled modeler, and Bob Andrews, a seasoned designer with a sharp eye for proportions. In less than 6 weeks, a pace unheard of in the industry, they created a shape that looked like it came from another planet. A flowing fiberglass body with no front grille, a long, low hood that seemed to stretch forever, a sharply raked windshield, and a tail that hinted at jet-age aerodynamics. From some angles, it didn't even look like an American car. Inside, the surprises continued. The dashboard curved gently toward the driver, wrapping around like the cockpit of a small aircraft. Deep bucket seats promised support at high speed. Gauges were clean, functional, and aviation-inspired. Brushed aluminum trim added a touch of technical precision, a stark contrast to the chrome-laden interiors of Detroit's mainstream offerings. When Egbert saw the prototype, he didn't hesitate. No tweaks, no compromises. Time was too short, and the design was too pure. The Avanti, in its radical new form, was ready to move from drawing board to reality. A shape that daring demanded the muscle to match. Egbert knew the Avanti couldn't just look fast, it had to be fast. But Studebaker didn't have the time or budget to develop an all-new engine from scratch. Instead, engineers turned to a proven workhorse, the company's own 289 cubic inch V8. This wasn't going to be a mild refresh. They reworked the internals, strengthening pistons, refining the camshaft, improving the carburation and airflow to create 3 distinct versions. The R1 was the baseline, naturally aspirated, refined, and robust, giving drivers smooth, usable power for everyday grand touring. Then came the R2, the game changer. Fitted with a Paxton supercharger, it delivered a fierce 290 horsepower. In the early 60s, that kind of output put the Avanti in rare company. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in about 7 seconds, quick enough to challenge both American muscle and European exotics. And then, there was the R3, the stuff of legend. Hand-built in tiny numbers, it featured custom-machined internals, a high-output ignition system, and over 335 horsepower on tap. This was the engine that roared across the Bonneville salt flats, pushing the Avanti beyond 170 miles per hour while still being street legal. Yet performance wasn't just about straight-line speed. The Avanti was tuned for stability and control at high speeds, with a chassis that inspired confidence. It offered something rare in American cars of the era, a genuinely sporty driving feel without sacrificing long-distance comfort. Perhaps its most forward-thinking feature was hidden in plain sight: front disc brakes. In 1962, almost no American production car came standard with them. This single upgrade gave the Avanti braking power and fade resistance well ahead of its time, reinforcing its status as a serious grand tourer. The Avanti wasn't simply an attention-grabbing design. Under the skin, it was a precision instrument, engineered to back up its radical looks with real-world capability. And Studebaker was ready to tell the world. Studebaker knew the Avanti wasn't just another new model, it was a statement, and they decided to market it that way. Rather than positioning it as a mainstream choice, the Avanti was presented as the car of the future, a bold leap forward in an industry that had grown predictable. The company didn't rely on the usual showroom posters or cautious newspaper ads. Instead, the Avanti appeared on the covers of fashion magazines, sharing space with haute couture rather than carburetors. It was displayed at design exhibitions, where architects and industrial designers admired it as much as gearheads. Photographers staged it alongside movie stars and style icons, crafting an image that was as much about sophistication as speed. But the most unforgettable imagery came from the wide-open expanse of the Bonneville Salt Flats. There, the supercharged R3 version was unleashed in a bid to claim speed records. Photographs captured the Avanti as it streaked across the endless white, the Paxton supercharger's whine echoing into the desert air. These weren't just publicity shots. They were proof that the Avanti's futuristic looks were backed by genuine performance. The gamble worked, at least at first. Newspapers and car magazines hailed the Avanti as a sensation. Dealers reported waves of showroom traffic. Orders poured in from curious buyers who wanted to be part of something daring and new. For a brief, shining moment, Studebaker had not just a new car, but a cultural event. The Avanti was the talk of the industry, a symbol that perhaps the little company from South Bend still had what it took to challenge the giants. But behind the glamorous photos and glowing headlines, trouble was brewing. The Avanti's radical fiberglass body, chosen to speed up development, was proving to be a double-edged sword. Unlike steel, which could be stamped into uniform panels by massive presses, fiberglass required hand-laying and curing, often by outside suppliers. The results were inconsistent. Body panels didn't always line up. Doors stuck or refused to close cleanly. Windshields didn't seat properly, leaving gaps. And in some cases, rainwater found its way into the cabin. Each car that rolled off the line felt more like a hand-built prototype than a refined production model. Studebaker's South Bend plant simply couldn't keep pace. Instead of the thousands of cars per month that dealers had been promised, only about 1,200 Avantis were built in the first year. Customers who had placed deposits grew frustrated with delays. Dealers, once buoyed by the initial hype, found themselves with empty showrooms and disappointed buyers. By late 1963, the dream was unraveling. In total, just over 5,800 Avantis were produced before Studebaker shut down its South Bend facility entirely. The move marked not only the end of Avanti production, but the beginning of the company's withdrawal from the American car market. 3 years later, in 1966, Studebaker exited the auto business altogether. The Avanti, once hailed as a daring leap into the future, had become a sobering example of the gap between ambition and manufacturing reality. It wasn't the design, the performance, or the vision that failed. It was the inability to deliver consistently on that promise. Still, the Avanti's story was far from over. For some, the car's brief moment in the spotlight only made it more special, and a few determined believers were already plotting its return. The Avanti could have ended there, another footnote in automotive history, a what could have been. But in South Bend, two men refused to let it die. Nate and Arnold Altman, brothers and longtime Studebaker dealers, believed the Avanti was too special to fade away. Right after the factory doors closed, they struck a deal to buy the rights to the design, the fiberglass body molds, and key assembly equipment. From that moment, the Avanti was reborn, not under Studebaker's banner, but as a handcrafted grand tourer built by the newly formed Avanti Motor Corporation. The Avanti 2 swapped the Studebaker F8 for Chevrolet's 327 cubic inch small block and paired it with a GM automatic transmission. But in every other way, it stayed true to the original spirit: the sleek, grille-less body, the jet-age interior, the sense that this was a car for people who wanted something different. Built in small numbers, each Avanti 2 was assembled with care and sold to buyers who valued individuality over mass appeal. Over the decades, engines and features were updated, ownership of the company changed hands, but the essence of the car never wavered. Meanwhile, original 1963 Avantis, especially the supercharged R2 and the ultra-rare R3, became prized collectibles. To enthusiasts, these models are rolling proof of what Studebaker could achieve when it dared to dream. Today, the Avanti Owners Association International keeps the flame alive. Members trade parts, share technical advice, and gather at meets where the cars still draw curious crowds. The Avanti never had the massive following of a Mustang or a Corvette, but that was never the point. Its legacy lives in the hearts of those who choose the road less traveled, and in that choice, the Avanti's spirit endures. The Avanti was never a perfect car. It wasn't mass-produced, it never won at Le Mans, and it never starred in a Hollywood blockbuster. But that's exactly what makes it special. It stands as a symbol of courage, of a small automaker daring to challenge the giants. A reminder that sometimes success isn't measured only in sales, but in the mark it leaves on the hearts of those who love cars. The Avanti wasn't born to please the crowd. It was built for those who value the different. And if you've ever been drawn to things that go against the grain, you just might see a part of yourself in this car. What about you? Do you think if the Avanti had been born in a different time, it could have become a legend? Share your thoughts in the comments, because it's your stories that keep legends like this alive. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, and be sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next journeys. where we'll explore the machines that once stirred the soul of a generation.